Hello, welcome back to Learn Economia. In this video, we are going to discuss a very common practice that is seen in present day trading between countries. That is trade war. So, what is trade war? In this video, we are going to learn many things about trade war. Altogether, we can say that almost all the things related to trade war would be discussed in detail in this video. So, let's go to the video. So, a trade war. So, what is a trade war? A trade war involves war in terms of trade between different nations. We know that in present day, all the world are connected. I mean, all nations are connected, and the world is considered to be a single entity, right? So, why we are exporting and why we are importing? This is a question. We can see that the products that is produced in our economy or our country are used not only by our citizens but also by the citizens of many other countries. And also, all the products that we use today are not the ones which are produced in our nations, but this constitute many products that are produced in different nations as well. So that means that import and export are something which a country cannot do away with. So a country in the present world cannot sustain without going for export and import. In this scenario, the concept of trade war gains importance. A trade war would happen when one country would try to retaliate against another country by raising the import tariff, or it can also place some restrictions on other countries' imports. We can see that we know that this even though countries are involved in export import kind of situations, there is something called dumping. Dumping involves some other countries coming to your country with their products, and they are actually selling their products at a very cheaper rate in your nation. As a result of the same, the citizens in your nation will see the products produced by some other countries as less expensive. So since citizens of your country are finding the products produced by some other countries as cheaper compared to what is produced in your country, the demand for products which are produced in your country would come down, and also you would try to demand more of what is produced in some other country. So this is what dumping is. So dumping is one of the is considered to be one of the problems that will lead to trade war. And trade war can commence if one country perceives that its competitor nation has gone for some unfair trading practices. And dumping is considered to be something unfair when the domestic economy is most affected as a result of dumping by some other country, right? And domestic trade unions or industry lobbyists can pressure politicians, etc. As a result, they will be going for certain policy initiatives that will go for international policy towards a trade war kind of a situation. And also, we can see that trade wars would result from some kind of misunderstanding between countries. This kind of situation, or a trade war, is considered to be a side effect of protectionism. Every country would try to gain from trade practices. For example, if country A is trading with country B, country A's intention is to make maximum profit, and country B's intention is to take maximum profit. So there is actually some kind of conflicting ideas existing, right? And protectionism refers to government actions as well as policies in order to restrict international trade. Why are we restricting international trade? If you are going for a situation like dumping, then that will definitely affect our domestic production. So if something is affecting our domestic production, we need to curtail it, right? So in a situation like dumping, the government of a country that is affected would go for some kind of stringent policy or actions to restrict its imports. So a country will generally undertake these kinds of protectionist actions in order to shield domestic business, and also in order to prevent its jobs from facing foreign competition. This protectionism is considered to be a method to deal with trade deficits as well. So if we are going for more of imports, what we need to do is that we are paying a lot to other nations. So in order to reduce our imports, in order to reduce our dependence on foreign products, what we do is that we would impose some kind of protectionist policies. And a trade deficit, in this case, we can see that would occur if we are paying a lot to other countries by importing more. So when a country imports exceeds its amount of exports, we have to pay more, and we will face what is known as a deficit kind of situation. So a tariff is imposed by the government here on imported commodities, and as a result we will try to reduce our consumption of imported commodities. In that way, government tries its level best to deal with its current account deficit. Now, we can see that current account deficit, in the sense that I was talking about trade deficits. I'm really sorry, these two are two different terms. When we are dealing with trade, when there is an imbalance between exports and imports, and your imports is more than exports, or the money that you gain, the money that you pay for imports is more than what you get in terms of exports, what you face is trade deficit, just not current account deficit. I mistakenly told so. Really sorry for that. It is trade deficit. And current account deficit, it is entirely something different. That is something to deal with your BOP situation, your balance of payment situation. I'll be discussing that in detail. I'll be discussing the difference between all these kinds of deficit, current account deficit, trade deficit, fiscal deficit. There can be a lot of deficit kind of things that we'll be discussing in detail in a new video. So for this timing, let's see what is a trade deficit. As I have already told you, this is something which happens as a result of your imports exceeding your exports. Okay, so in a global economy, we can see that trade war is something that is very much common, and also we can see that this is very much damaging to the consumers as well as business entities. So, whenever there is a trade war which affects one sector, or whenever there is a trade war which begins in one sector, you cannot say that it will have its implications on that sector only. That means that it will definitely have its implications on other sectors as well, because we know that different sectors in the economy are connected. Different sectors in the economy are connected in the sense that there is some kind of backward linkages as well as forward linkages. So these sectors are connected in different ways. Likewise, you can see that a trade war, uh, um, which has started in one country, has its implications in other countries as well. So this is a kind of tit for tat kind of a battle. If country A and country B are engaged in trade, and if country A goes for protectionist policies by reducing its or cutting down imports from country B, then country B too can go for some kind of revenge or retaliation policy. So it's a kind of tit for tat battle. And the trade war is actually distinct from other actions like controlling your imports or export. You are actually not physically reducing your imports, but you are trying to make your imported partner to reduce imports. So you are actually imposing some kind of restriction on your your partner who is importing to your country. So here, in addition to tariffs, protectionist policies can be implemented by placing a cap on your import quotas. So, and also, you can see that your importing partner can face certain restrictions as a result of these kinds of protectionist policies. Going back to the history of trade wars, you can see that this is not a new thing. It is not a new invention. This has been there for as long as nations have conducted trade with one another. We know that this is something which could be traced back to centuries ago, right? This has started some long years ago, right? So if you look back to the colonial period, you can see that colonial powers, they fought between each other, and this fight was over the right to trade. They wanted the exclusive right of trade. So each colony or each leader want to have uh, the exclusive right of trade with themselves. So if you look into the case of British Empire, you can see that it has got a long history of trade battles. This was basically between the British Empire and China, and the Britishers, they had been sending India produced opium into China. So they were these people, Britishers were exporting opium to China for years, but the Chinese emperor during that time, that person considered it to be illegal, and there were many attempts to deal with this kind of conflict. And at last, what happened was that the emperor of China eventually sent troops to confiscate these opium or drugs. But we can say that the British Navy, they prevailed, and China conceded additional entry of foreign trade into the nation. In 1930s, we know that the world was trapped in what is known as the Great Depression, right? So during 1930s, the United States enacted a uh, smooth, heavily Tariff Act, and this act was something which was related to raising the tariffs to protect American farmers. This was actually these people were actually facing some problems from the European agricultural products. As a result, this act increased the already hefty import duties to almost 40%. As America entered into what is known as Great Depression, this created a lot of problems. Beginning in January 2018, very recently, you could see that the then President Trump has imposed a series of tariffs on everything from steel, aluminum, etc. So these duties impacted goods from many countries like European Union, Canada, China, Mexico, etc. We know that China is actually exporting steel to many countries, and Canada has retaliated to this by imposing a series of temporary duties on American steel. And European Union, what it has done is that it has imposed tariffs on American agricultural imports. By May of 2019, tariffs on Chinese imports impacted nearly $200 billion of imports. So this was a kind of trade war between China and US. China has retaliated to this. China retaliated by imposing stiff duties on American imports. So what International Monetary Fund during this time done is that it has conducted a study, and in the study it showed that US importers of goods have primarily shouldered the cost of imposed tariffs on Chinese goods. These costs were eventually passed on to American consumer because they had to pay a high price for the commodities which they could purchase from the market. So we can see that even though the trade war is something that could be traced back to centuries back or centuries ago, this particular concept or this particular tool has got certain pros as well as cons. It has got certain advantages as well as disadvantages. So uh, pros includes it protects domestic companies from unfair competition. That means that if there is dumping in an economy, then your domestic producers would be harmly affected. They would be suffering losses. So in that case, if you're going for protectionism, it would be helping your domestic production and domestic consumption, and also it increases demand for domestic goods, right? So it promotes local job growth. That means that you are increasing your production of domestically produced commodities. For production, you need more laborers, and for more laborers, you are creating more employment opportunities. As a result, it will promote local job growth. Then it will improve trade deficit. That is, you are importing less. You could save a lot of money. That means that it would improve your trade deficit. Then it punishes nation with unethical trade policies. Why? Is because if any nation is going for dumping or some kind of things with your nation would be going for protectionist policies, and as a result, it is a kind of punishment that your nation is taking for other nations, so that your nation could help to deal with many problems related to dumping. Coming to the benefits or cons, the benefits are it would increase the cost as well as induces inflation. Uh, so here the problems cons. I mean, we have already discussed the benefits, and now here we have the cons. That means that here we have the problems. It decreases cost as well as induces inflation. That means that you are importing a lot of commodities, and you are importing, as a result, as a result, why you are importing is because you have money in your hand, and this would increase cost as well as inflation. It would cause marketplace shortages, reduce choice. That means that when you go for protectionist kind of thing, uh, you are reducing your imports. You are reducing your imports means that you are creating an artificial shortage. So it will lead to increase in inflation, increase in price level. It will reduce your choice. Your preference bundle or your choice bundle would be reduced, and as a result it would discourage trade, and also it would slow down economic growth because people have less money with them, and as a result it will reduce economic growth. Also, it would hurt diplomatic relations between nations, and also cultural exchange would be badly affected. The critics of protectionist policies or protectionism would say that the people, actually, if they go for these kinds of things, it will definitely impact the cultural exchange, as also consumers they begin to have less choice in the marketplace, and they have to pay more for raw materials. It would increase cost and create a lot of problems with respect to these kinds of things. So just take the example of trade war. We have seen the trade war between US and European Union, China, Japan, etc. So let's understand a kind of trade war in detail. Actually, it happened. It started during 2016 during the President Donald Trump's time. So what the then president of US, what he has expressed is that he had expressed his disdain for many current trade agreements. So this has promised to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States from many nations, many other nations. So after election, what has done is that president, he has threatened to pull the US economy out of the World Trade Organization. In early 2018, President has stepped up his effort, and the Chinese retaliated to this. And what he has done is that he had threatened, he has gone for a threatening a substantial fine over the alleged intellectual property theft with respect to China, and China has retaliated. China has taken revenge for this with a 25% tax on over 100 US products. In 2018, or in throughout 2018, China and US continued to threaten each other. China has responded with tariff of its own. American duties have had some kind of impact on Chinese economy. So as a result, we could see that it had these kind of retaliation, tit for tat kind of policy had hurted both the economies, both China as well as US. In December, each nation agreed to halt imposing new taxes. So in the spring, China and US seemed on the verge of a trade agreement. Uh, you can see that anchored by the backtracking, President doubled down, announcing on May 5 of 2019 that he was going to increase tariffs. So these people, these two countries were increasing tariffs with respect to the import of other country. I mean, US was actually increasing tariff on the import of China, and China was increasing tariff uh, on the import by US. So these two things were continuing, but after realizing that this was mutually destructive, US and China agreed to have a deal, had to have a trade deal. So as a result, these two countries have signed a deal on January 15, 2020, But after that, what happened was that there was a COVID pandemic. Second round was coming, and this had that threatened a further escalation of trade tension between the two nations. So that was all about trade war. We can see that trade war to an extent is good, but after once it crosses a particular limit, it is considered to be destructive for both the nations who are engaged in trade war. So to an extent it is good, but you have to make it sure that we have to make it sure that it is not crossing the limit. That is very important. So like share and subscribe to this channel. It is very much useful for you. So make it useful. So like, share and subscribe to this channel, and you can be a part of my Telegram channel and Telegram group. I'll be giving the links of these in the description box. You can pick it from there. That's all for today. Thank you. There.